I want us to become brothers again like we used to be, and for us to find ourselves and bond with each other. Can we agree to that?
Opinions vary.
Welcome to Three Brothers Filmcast. I'm Aaron Bergstrom, and I'm here with my brothers,
Anders.
And Anton.
My last name is the same as my brother's.
And this month we're digging into the 2025 Oscars. We'll discuss the Oscars in general, as well as the individual nominees for Best Picture before offering our predictions at the end. Before we dig in, a reminder to please leave a rating or review if you like what you're hearing. This is an independent podcast, so reviews and ratings are hugely important in getting the show to more listeners and for growing our website, threebrothersfilm.com. So thank you for your support, and now, on to the show.
And here we go.
Back in 2009, in the wake of the controversy over The Dark Knight not getting nominated for Best Picture, the Academy expanded its Best Picture field from 5 to 10 nominees. This was a populist move meant to get more famous movies nominated and get the average moviegoer more involved in the Best Picture conversation. Flash forward to 2025, and the move has completely failed to rejuvenate interest in the Oscars. While noting that last year was the exception that proves the rule, Best Picture nominees have gotten more independent, more niche, and more unseen by the vast majority of the moviegoing population. This year, the 10 nominees for Best Picture are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, EMILIA Péréz, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. Only 2 of these films, Dune and Wicked, are out-and-out blockbusters, while A Complete Unknown is the only other one that was even a modest box office success. Now, box office is not the be-all and end-all of popularity, but clearly the move to expand the Best Picture field has not led to more popular movies being nominated for Best Picture, or to more people watching the actual nominees. It's made being nominated for Best Picture less prestigious. For instance, no one even remembers District 9 as a Best Picture nominee because it hardly seems an honor worth mentioning. While simultaneously, it makes it more likely that movies that no one has ever heard of get nominated, or even win the Oscar. Need I remind you that Coda won Best Picture in 2021? To me, the Oscars have become culturally irrelevant, and it's time to either revert to 5 nominees to restore some classicism to the institution, or rethink the process altogether.
Okay, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
Now, before we jump into discussing the movies themselves, I want to briefly get your thoughts on the Oscars in general. What did you think of this year's nominations, and do you think the Oscars need to change their process moving forward? Anton?
I have only watched about 3 of the nominations, but I find the list fairly lackluster. Obviously, there's a few on there that I'm a big fan of, but which we covered already on the podcast. But I do find that more and more the Oscars just seem irrelevant. They're not really a part of the mainstream culture anymore. I mean, I grew up watching the Oscars. For years, it was like my signature TV event. Probably from 2000 to about 2017. I think 2017 is about the last time I actually watched a full Oscars broadcast, and I haven't since. And even last year when Nolan won, I didn't watch it. I just watched the clips of all of Nolan wins and speeches afterwards. But I just find that it no longer sort of captures or warrants that much attention.
How about you, Anders?
I generally would agree that this year's nominations, I think overall, I've seen 7 of them. A lot of them are good, but is this totally representative of, not only my own top 10 films of the year, but even the broad movie-going public, those who are really obsessed with movies? Not really, terribly. It does feel a little bit somehow out of step in a weird way. And I do think I think the Oscars need to figure something out here, but I think that they're going about it the wrong way, kind of the way a lot of things do. It's like they end up basically capitulating to the logic of the very people who were never going to watch it to begin with anyway, right? And I think that you need to make the Oscars something for those people who remember, like Anton and myself. I mean, I remember, I think the first time I watched even part of the Oscars, I was quite young. I was maybe 8 or 9. No, I guess 9 years old would have been when Unforgiven won in 1991. So it would have been early 92. So I guess
I remember parts of the Schindler's List broadcast.
Yeah. 93.
And then the 93, the 94, definitely watched the Schindler's List. And from then on, I think I almost watched every Oscars telecast from 1994 through to 2009, which is the first year I missed it because I was living overseas and it was on at a weird time. And then I probably watched it most years, but not quite as like obsessively. And I did watch last year's. I usually watch it. My oldest son, he's getting to the age he sort of is taken with lists and awards and things like that. He's interested in not only the Oscars, but like the music charts, like Billboard and even to some degree the Grammys and stuff. So, and then it is still attempts on television to be that sort of event thing. I mean, we just don't have a lot of that in our culture anymore. But I think that people do underestimate that television still does reach quite large crowds. But maybe it's only the Super Bowl.
But the Oscars used to be up there, close to the Super Bowl, not quite, but up there for ratings is one of the major events.
It was up there, but not anywhere close to like a sporting event. But I think, but you're right. It did feel different in terms of how it both reflected the pulse of like the movie media and the movie going public.
And I would remember that like in the schoolyard, like kids would mention maybe like a joke or something from like the broadcast. Like there was just a sense that like regular people and a lot of people would just tune in at some point and watch it. And what I find is that like with this, like now we're getting to a point where like it's not only just the Oscars problem, it's also just the fact that we don't really have like a monoculture anymore where there is sort of like the mainstream, like everything's sort of fragmented in their own niche, which is an issue for it.
I mean, that's been happening for a long time. There's two things. I think all the things you're saying are to some degree correct. I think, though, the biggest thing that we're realizing is like the Oscars are always kind of out of step with like the mainstream popularity, right? Like they didn't nominate like Adam Sandler comedies and things like that, right? That were always the big things, but it did reflect the pulse of the movie culture. Both the people who made movies, magazines like Entertainment Weekly and Premiere and things like that, right? That kind of culture, movie culture, Variety, etc. But now we have the internet, and the internet just seems to be disconnected from whatever the Oscars are doing right now to some degree. And when the Oscars try to appeal to it, it just comes across bad.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of cultural stuff, but I find the issue with so much of what the Oscars, the slate of movies they put out, like, we'll get into this later when we actually go down the individual films, but a movie like Nickel Boys, I really like Nickel Boys. I think it's one of the best movies of these nominations. Like, it's really good. But I think it's almost kind of absurd that it's nominated for Best Picture. Because, like, nobody knows it exists.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like, there was never a spot for micro indies to show up on Best Picture, because it's like, maybe it's just kind of one of these things where the slate of nominees reflects the industry in a sense of like, you only make massive movies or tiny movies, and that's really kind of it. Which is, it's not the Oscars' fault in that sense, but I do think the post-Oscars So White adjustment where they opened up the floodgates of who they allowed in. And again, there's the diversity question is not the things here. The thing here is that a lot of people they invited in were people who only are as engaged within cinema culture as a like online presence or a like film person as opposed to a filmmaker. So it ceased to be an industry award and became kind of like a quote unquote industry award. And so I always make this comment to friends or whatnot when we're talking about Oscar movies, and it's like, I kind of liked that back in the day, the Oscars were kind of stuffy and middlebrow, but it seemed to represent a lane of what Hollywood wanted to present themselves as in terms of artistic importance. And it showed you that it's still always with this like populist approach to what an artful film is, right? You always think of something like Out of Africa as these movies that kind of get panned out. I think like really good movie, and there's a lot of value.
Even Forrest Gump.
Yeah, no, Forrest Gump. But there's like a lot of value in those types of movies.
Patient.
But those movies are not high art, and they're not like pretending to be. They're middlebrow, right? Like, and we don't
in the best
really,
sense of the word.
Yeah, we don't really get the middlebrow anymore. Partially because the Oscars, by the people they invited in, are too hyper obsessed with this presentation of themselves as like, well, cinema's reacting to the world and it's interesting and it's important.
Well, maybe we can get into this when we talk about this year's movies. that does make me think there's one movie that maybe represents that true middle ground. There's a couple, but there's one to me.
There are a few middle ground. There always are, but what I'm saying is that I kind of like that it used to be, there's like the movies that made the most money, there's the movies the critics liked, and then there's the movies the Oscars liked. And there was like these three things with the Venn diagram, like they would overlap in elements, but not entirely. And now I swear, you look at the Critics' Choice Awards and you look at the Oscar nominees, and they're just identical.
Yep.
Don't you think that like the Oscars were always about like Hollywood's congratulations?
Yes, it's
literally the
awards.
Screen Industry Awards,
Yes,
right? Like
and
they're the
it's-
union voting for themselves.
Yeah, and it's the industry and it's the big players and it's how they sort of wanted to reward the year and say what they thought was the big movies and the best movies, but within like the big Hollywood factory. Obviously, we should give attention to movies that aren't a part of that. But the question is like, why did the Oscars? There's almost a sense that there was a sense of they tried to be more inclusive, not on like a sort of diversity representation. That I'm setting that aside, but more inclusive of the sense of like we have to capture the best, the real actual best movie that's out there from whatever country, whatever budget level.
Which is a quixotic quest, as you're never going to be able to do that, right?
But then it oddly says that, like, they think that is sort of like an inclusive thing, but at the same time, it's saying that somehow the Oscars, Hollywood in the USA's award show, is somehow the world's award show.
Yeah, there's a kind of an American exceptionalism aspect to it.
Even
still.
though it was, like, because that's
exactly.
why, like, I love Parasite.
What you're saying, Anton, is really important. It builds on what Aaron is saying. Like, it used to be that the Oscars were really for mostly American films and really
and there was foreign language
ones that got
film
big
before.
distribution, right? Yeah, and foreign language films very rarely, or if ever, got nominated, let alone won. But also, you said there was a monoculture, but I think what Aaron and you were gesturing at was that actually there was the Oscars, which sort of represented itself as like the dominant monoculture, whatever. But you knew that if you went and read the Cahiers du Cinema, you're going to get something totally different. If you went to the National Board of Review or the New York Film Critics, slightly different, right? That Aaron said, overlapping Venn diagram, sure. And so there was, in that sense, it showed that like no one group or association had the market on, this is the best movie of the year, right? Like we all have our own. It was ironically, in that sense, more representative of, a plurality.
Yeah, so are we going to start
cultures.
saying that, like, the Oscars actually has to go and take the best movies from like every country, or that's not fair? Because then you're like, that's also like inflating the importance of what the Oscars are.
But like,
and nobody can see it all.
The Hong Kong Film Award, like what are the Golden Horse, and there's all the Bollywood award. Like it's just this is one of those things where it's like American culture becomes international culture, and then they determine, because that's the culture everybody engages with in large part of the world, that somehow the represent, it's whatever, it's the like soft imperialism, right, of American culture.
So it's interesting to look at like this list this year to think about the way it is also a self-conscious choice to try to pick things from all over, right? So you got the international film, you got the American indie, you got a couple blockbusters, you got the issue movies, you got the Palme d'Or movie, you got, they're trying to draw on a lot of different things, but it ends up feeling kind of like a scattershot, or like too much of a, like when people like do the list. There's a thing actually online right now, like Letterboxd does, like they'll go to, because they have a person who goes to all these awards and red carpets and stuff, they do, you share your Letterboxd 4, right? Everyone has their 4 films on Letterboxd. And people, it's like the thing where someone's like gives like 3 like Stone Cold classics and then throws like a weird one out there, and people are like, oh, I love that so and so had that, like Zoolander as their 4th, and it's like, it's calculated. It's kind of like, yeah, of course they actually genuinely like Zoolander, but in this Oscar list,
this is the ultimate thing, I think, is that the Oscars is catering more to the Letterboxd people now than to the average person who goes sees a movie.
But they still hate it.
No, I know. That's the joke. But also it's the counterintuitive of like, they tried to make these changes to pivot to the average person. And like so much of culture in the 2010s through to now, the correction to be more exclusive became more exclusionary, or inclusive became more exclusionary, right? And so became more off-putting to the average person, and became actually harder to break into. And hilariously, at the end of the day, the Oscars are a representation of that movie year. there's something very fitting about a movie like Coda winning Best Picture when literally 2 months later, not a single person would ever remember that. Like, nobody remembers that movie because nobody remembers that movie year. It's just, this is so much how movies have degraded within the culture.
You're Norma Desmond. Used to be in silent pictures. Used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
All right, so let's start discussing the movies themselves here. We've already talked about Anora and Dune Part 2 on the podcast, so I think we can leave those aside. To recap, if you didn't listen to those episodes, we're all fans. From thinking it very good to like best of the year.
Can we also just say to start things off that like this hasn't been a good movie year overall?
Well, and last episode we were talking about best of 2024, and we had like a bit of a spiel about. Honestly, 2024 was a really bad movie year for Hollywood, and so the Oscars are a Hollywood Film Award. Even if it has movies outside of Hollywood, it's reflective of Hollywood, and Hollywood's not doing well.
Whereas I actually think last year's list was pretty good. Like, if I go back and look at that list of movies, there's a bunch of those that
It's almost really because Oppenheimer and Barbie was this mirage of like what could be in the summer again.
But even the holdovers, Anatomy of a Fall, like I thought a lot of them were good.
Yes, very. Like I really liked American Fiction. I thought Killers of the Flower Moon was like middle of the road, middle of the pack for those movies.
Which to me is saying a lot about that roster.
Yeah, no, but it was a good year. But like, so this year, I think it's like a mixed bag. But I was pretty disappointed when I saw the nominations. Not to say there are not movies here I like, and some of them quite a bit. I had already briefly talked about Conclave on a previous episode, but I'm pretty sure you both recently caught up with it, yes?
Yep.
Yeah, I watched this
So I think let's start there, and then we can move through the rest of the nominees, and we can just, if we haven't seen them, we can brief, whoever did can make the brief comment. But Conclave. Anton, I'm curious about you, because I just feel like Edward Berger makes movies somewhat for you. It's like a little bit serious, but like follows a clear conventional like arc and structure and stuff. Though I'm curious,
it's like a better Dan Brown novel.
No, it's a little bit of Dan Brown, yeah.
Well, I would say that I wish it was a little bit more Dan Brown, actually. I find that the movie, I liked Conclave. I think that the twist ending, which is a little bit like...
I was like laughing.
Yeah, it's a bit goofy.
Well, it's out there. It does follow... I would say that like... we're going to spoil things?
Yeah, I just spoil everything. Who gives a crap?
So like having the person who's going to become Pope turn out to be, an intersex person, it's in a tradition both within film and within drama of like sort of this shocking sort of gender reveal. Like Shakespeare at times would have a character all of a sudden you're like, I thought you were a boy the whole play, and then they reveal that they're actually a girl, and then there's the crying game. Like this has happened in movies. I just thought that like it wasn't of a piece with the more serious aspect that the film... Well, I'll go two ways. I think that on the one hand, the ending seems a little bit sensational, and I was like, if you're gonna do this movie more sensational, why don't we just also have a little bit more? So why isn't it like what no one's ever thinking about, was the Pope killed? And like there's a whole bunch of thriller possibilities that if we're going to do a big shock twist at the end, we could actually sort of unravel and enjoy a bit more. At the same time, the more I think about it, there is like a thematic significance to the ending where, the comment, the character's line about the uncertainties, it relates to the film's whole approach to like what
Cardinal Lawrence's comment.
Well, so the Cardinal Lawrence's homily links to I forget the character's name, but the person who becomes
the Cardinal of Kabul.
Yeah. So the person like who becomes Pope, they also have a comment at the end to Lawrence saying that kind of that they represent with their sort of intersex body, that they represent these sort of two they represent the sort of coming together of uncertainties, and that so then bodily
like the paradox of God.
Yeah, so then bodily it's sort of like it's supposed to kind of represent the way they want the church to be. So I do think there's a thematic resonance.
Okay,
there.
I agree with that. I'm going to go backwards to my evaluation of watching Conclave here. is that I agree that there's a lot of little threads in Conclave that are somewhat thematically interesting. I think, and I could see how that fits in with those themes, but like there's something kind of like if you're going to explore that, to drop it at the end means you don't ever have to actually explore it.
Yes.
Which could potentially be a really interesting thing to think about. Like, oh, okay, this person, lived as a man their whole life and only discovered when they went to a doctor that, yeah, they also had a whole ovarian uterus, which is, it's an interesting thing. And the idea that they embody this thing. Well, there's some other stuff in it. But I think the film itself, these aren't probably original comments entirely, but like, for a film that wants to be about these serious things, it also only engages with them to a certain level, right? Like, in terms of our understanding of like the politics of the Vatican, it's pretty indistinguishable from like secular politics to a great degree, except I would say for Cardinal Lawrence. He's the only character who's allowed to go beyond being a stand-in for some abstract thing in our culture, right? Like the right-wing vaping cardinal, I love Tedesco, he's great. Stanley Tucci's American liberal, who's willing to like go for is Cardinal Tremblay, John Lithgow, supposed to be from Canada?
Yeah, he's French. Yeah.
Okay, he's the French. Okay.
Yeah.
He didn't really have enough of a French accent.
He's the Quebec. Yeah.
But anyway, so each of the characters.
It's Cardinal
plays
Montreal,
these,
remember, not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, that's my thing. So take it one step then further back. I liked Conclave. I thought it was entertaining. It plays a little bit like a mystery. Lawrence is constantly uncovering the next thing. It's a bit sort of like a formulaic mystery kind of novel, but it is ultimately a fairly. This is the movie to me that represents that kind of middlebrow Oscar, where it's like kind of too serious to be campy, but there's moments where it almost verges on it. But it really wants to be taken seriously, even though. But that never goes serious enough to really examine the themes that it wants to be. So it's caught in the middle. So ultimately, I like Conclave. If it wins, I wouldn't be shocked or upset. But I do think it's a very middling movie in some ways.
I do think it's
shot like a TV show.
Its sense of politics within the church, obviously your average person won't know a
Sure,
lot about that. But it's
good
very
movies invite us to want to know more.
But it's very representative of a Hollywood approach to how you sort of caricature different factions to sort of have it play out. I also said to my wife afterwards, I was like, wow, there's a movie that kind of it would kind of just be a boring, bad movie if it wasn't so well acted and so well shot.
I don't know if I really love the way it's shot. To me, it feels a little bit TV-ish, like prestige TV. It's a little bit too polished and smooth, and but
it's a bit digital, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree with the acting again. It's the Ralph Fiennes is
Ralph
really
Fiennes,
good.
But I love Ralph Fiennes all the time. Even in a bad movie, I love Ralph Fiennes.
No, but it's not. What I'm saying is his performance. He's not giving He's giving a great performance in a movie that's pretty good.
Did you ever think that he was gonna? The twist I was hoping for was that
he'd become Pope.
That he was actually just a Machiavel.
Yes, that's what I was kind of hoping
everyone.
for, honestly.
Yeah,
that's my issue at the end is that it's detached from the rest of the movie because he's resolved the central thing.
Ironically, it's a little bit Deus Ex Machina-ish. He literally parachutes in before the conclave starts.
I also think there is a more, this is not the movie that that it even is interested in being, but I do think the more interesting and pulpy version of the movie is simply the Pope's been killed by somebody in there, and that's the thing you find out a third of the way through the movie is that one of the cardinals is responsible for killing the Pope, and then the twist that you could do is that it's Lawrence or it's the new Pope
with,
or something.
Angels and Demons?
No, there is, but what I'm saying is that I think the mysterious circumstances of the Pope's death in it, it's why play such a big deal if you're never going to dangle that thread?
I also saw one person write this on the review on Letterboxd, and I can't remember who it is right now, but I 100% agree. The dead Pope should have been played by a big star.
That's true. For having a big cast, you need
yeah. But Conclave is the type of movie that it being nominated doesn't surprise me.
No.
And it feels somewhat appropriate because in my review for the site, I did talk about the fact that on the spectrum of art, literature is more accomplished and considered a higher art than cinema. Therefore, when you take a work of written fiction, it can be a low work of fiction, and when it gets translated into cinema, it somehow upgrades, so it becomes middlebrow.
It's the Godfather phenomenon, yeah.
Yeah, but Girl to Dragon Tattoo, how many thrillers, courtroom dramas, so forth from the 80s and 90s and early 2000s.
Even a lot of Hitchcock's films.
A lot of Hitchcock, yeah. No, so it's a kind of a classic thing.
And it plays as very timely right now.
Let me speak from the heart for a moment. St. Paul said, "Be subject to one another out of reverence for Christ." To work together and to grow together, we must be tolerant. No one person or faction seeking to dominate another. And speaking to the Ephesians, who were, of course, a mixture of Jews and Gentiles, Paul reminds us that God's gift to the church is its variety. It is this variety, this diversity of people and views which gives our church its strength.
Did either of you see The Brutalist?
I did not. I could not find 3.5 hours.
The length of it's actually hilarious because like the ambition. So I'm the one who saw The Brutalist, and I definitely enjoyed seeing it. Going to see it in 70mm at the Lightbox in Toronto was a good time. It was a good afternoon, but like it's my whole afternoon, right? And I liked having the intermission. It's a great thing to have those 10 minutes where you can pop out and go to the washroom if you need or grab a snack or whatnot. It's kind of a nice clarifying thing. But it's a movie where I'm like, there is no way that this story should actually be that long. But at the same time, I don't almost begrudge it because the movie's ambitions are what make it interesting. Like, if it wasn't so wildly ambitious, I don't think it'd be worth much talking about this movie. I don't know. Because it's not particularly well written.
Is the ambition mostly the length?
The ambition's in the length, but it's also that attempt to, like, it's filmed in VistaVision, right? So it's presenting of the past. It's the idea of the ambition is the fact that every single element of the movie, whether it's the artistic or the thematic or the actual narrative, like it's supposed to be this grand comment on, you know, the suffering of the artist, which is also mirroring the suffering of the immigrant, which is also mirroring the suffering of the Jew, right? And it's just all these things like blended together, and and then it's super like didactic with its use of symbolism and other things. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys because you haven't seen it yet, so hold it, but there is like a moment in the second half of the movie that just spells out its themes in such a way that I'm like, for a moment, like I was really into this movie, and then it happens, I'm just like, I'm lost. Like you've just lost me because
it's a common thing in movies nowadays.
Your artistic
need to
impulse
spell
just
out your themes, so
blew
obviously.
it apart, but in a way that like narratively is stupid. It's not even just like, oh, that's risky. It's like
so it might have that in common with another film on this list.
It's like this is bad writing. So yeah, it's like Brutalist. Is it a movie that is well directed, but perhaps poorly written? Probably. It's funny that it's the same guy doing both. But that is often a nature too, right? Is he wants to be known as a great auteur, so great auteurs write their works. And it's like, no, they don't. Scorsese doesn't write his movies. Spielberg doesn't write his movies. What are you talking about?
David Fincher doesn't write his of contemporary games.
Yeah, like they're better than you'll ever be. So just calm down. And I mean, talking about this next guy movie, actually, he did write the movie, but it's based off, real life, A Complete Unknown. This is a movie where I'm like, this is kind of a classic Oscar movie, and
it is absolutely.
And I kind of love it because it's the movie you take your dad to, which I literally took Dad to.
I took my whole family to go see.
Like, Dad was like afterwards, he's like, oh, it's very meaningful. Like,
even my kids liked it. So I mean, they're 11 and 13, but
yeah. Anton, did you see this?
I haven't. No.
I've been getting a kick out of the Chalamet press tour because he seems to be having a great time, but he's also
I'm loving it. He's
super earnest about how much he wants to win.
Hanging out with all the soccer clubs is hilarious, by the way. He's got a favorite team in every country.
Man, Chalamet might be rejuiced. He might be the only actual Gen Z movie star.
Yeah.
Because he's
in
got
the classic sense,
he's got like real swag, but he's also got that
personality.
He's super comfortable in front of like crowds and stuff, but he's got that true movie star thing, which is like an almost like psychopathic desire to be better than everybody else.
Yeah,
it's the thing that Leo has or Tom Cruise or whatnot, right? Like, and you going back and there's a lot of good Gen Z actors, but I don't see that same like oh, you're taking it like a little bit too far in terms of your dedication to your craft, and that actually makes me like them more than the so-called like humble. You always get the people being like, oh, with all my friends here, blah blah blah.
And A Complete Unknown is a classic Oscar movie. It's a James Mangold, so it's sturdy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like some
Sturdy
people are going to be
Mangold.
annoyed by like some of it, but I'm like, I enjoyed it.
Oh,
I
but-
kind of had a grin on my face the whole movie.
No,
like,
so
kinda.
who is it? I forget who it is. Some critic said that it is a movie in which there are potentially too many shots of people kind of watching in adoration and awe as Bob Dylan plays an entire song.
Yep.
And people will be like,
But
oh,
you
aren't
love
there a
it.
few too
It's
many of
so
that?
good.
I'm like, but that is the whole point of, like, that is the movie.
That's what we wanted.
No, but the movie's thematics actually are just about, like, how can we understand why this guy's a genius? And the whole point of the movie is that you can't. He just is a genius, and you have to roll with it. And it's not a matter of him some kind of moral triumph over
No.
personal failings. It's not a matter that he's
'Cause
better
he's
than
kind
other
of a
people.
jerk.
No, he's just a guy. He just happens to be great at this one
Yep.
thing. and
And we are almost more aligned with like the other people in his life,
Yes.
right? So Pete Seeger and
the girlfriend
Baez.
character, who's kind of the name's different
What's her
in
name?
the movie.
Yeah.
It's not the real character, real life person's name, but the Elle Fanning in the movie. And yeah,
And then Joe Baez,
Pete Seeger's very like
Oh,
likable.
this movie is also, I'm really happy that it got a lot of the acting nominations. Chalamet is great. He's very good in it.
Do you
He's
think
uncanny.
he should win?
Of the ones that are nominated and that I've seen, yes, but I've only seen it.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
haven't seen all of them.
There's some good. Have I seen all five? I've seen Coleman Domingue. I've seen Sing Sing. I've seen Complete Unknown. I've seen Conclave.
It's Sebastian Stan as Don.
I haven't seen Apprentice, which that movie sounds kind of stupid, but
I'm curious just because Roy Cohn's such a fascinating figure, but I'll probably just go back and watch Angels in America again.
yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, Complete Unknown is that kind of classic Oscar movie where it's a lot of, it's a biopic, but then you get all these like, big actors playing.
I also hope actually Edward Norton wins too.
Big actors playing important historical figures, right? And it's fun to be like, oh, that's so and so, and that's so, and that's one of the things that watching it with Dad, but also it was at the Varsity in Toronto, and if you've ever been to the Varsity in Toronto, it is old people central. Like it is, they put their show times earlier, they have their volume up, just because they have so many old people that go to the matinees and want to see the Oscar movies or the prestige movies or the British book club movie, right? And we kind of stick up our noses at that as like film bros or cinephiles or film Twitter people or whatever, right?
That's
Like,
what the Oscars was originally about.
but it is. But it's also people fail to understand like all these people who they're smarter than everything, right? I know everything about all times and all places, and I know everything about everything, and so they have no curiosity or yearning in the way that they approach art. And so when they go to the cinema, they don't understand that so many people are going to this because they want to spend 2 hours reliving a world that is lost to them now, or they want to reimagine a past that, like the fact that you have, a comment that Dad made, be like, I was too young to really be a Dylan guy. I was into Johnny Cash a little later. But it was nice to be like, I'm witnessing this era again in a very curated sense of like what I experienced as an actual person, just a taste of, and I know that my parents actually really, genuinely experienced it and stuff. And I think there's nothing wrong with that as like a motivation to go see a movie. It's like, oh, I liked the 60s. I liked Bob Dylan. I want to go spend 2.5 hours with Bob Dylan in the 60s. And people are like,
And the
oh,
movie delivers.
you can't. It's like, well, if you didn't have the like hits, you wouldn't be fulfilling the purpose of the movie, which is to have people relive Bob Dylan in the 60s.
We didn't need another artsy. We have I'm Not There, which is a great movie, but it's a completely different take on it.
Or you can just go see Don't Look Now. Like, seriously, you got the Dylan from the 60s.
You actually have the documentary.
So I actually really like Complete Unknown. I
Same.
have heard a lot of comments from various prognosticators because of this year's unpredictability that this movie, a lot of them are saying that it's the dark horse because it's most likely most people's number 2.
Yeah.
And it's a
And
preferential ballot.
I also think it has a good chance of winning its acting awards.
Yeah.
At least the two guys.
All right. Emilia Perez. Anthony, did you watch this?
I almost spewed all over my computer. Sorry, the water.
This movie might literally be made to make you go insane, Anton.
But unfortunately, as I said, in the morning after watching it, my wife, she was somewhat curious about it. And I'm like, unfortunately, it's just plain bad. It's not actually like so batshit that you like, got to check this out kind of thing. It's not worth your time.
No, Anton, it's
just so poorly made.
It's just a fumble.
That's crazy coming from
ODR. I know.
Yeah, but he has that in him.
He does. He's got the crazy Frenchman stuff of like a wild abandon of like, I can do it.
Here's my problem with, I think that there's a kernel of something interesting you could do with the basic storyline of like, if you were actually, to go back to something both of you said earlier, if you were an actual curious person who actually wanted to explore it a little more beyond just it as a sort of strange allegory for personal transformation, and that it doesn't
like
actually
salvation
really
is suffering.
Yeah, it's very, very weird, and frankly tasteless. Not necessarily in the trans stuff, but in the approach to the violence of cartels and things like that is baffling to me.
I'm not gonna lie. Sorry, just to cut, but like, I'm a little bit surprised after watching it that like the transness of the movie seems actually the least important element. The music,
to some degree.
No, but like a lot of like the musical aspects, the cartel stuff is like looms way more.
Yeah.
And is much more vulgar.
Right. So I said to Aaron after watching this that this is one of the most literal-minded musicals or movies I've seen. Everything is text. There's no subtext.
The songs are basically
the songs are not songs. They're not songs.
They're just descriptions.
The characters just start, and I'm sure some people they were trying to go for was like a libretto style thing, like in Umbrellas of Cherbourg or Annette or these other French ones. But these songs are awful. They're just characters start talking their inner monologue in a weird, awkward way. It's so bad. There are moments where the film starts to veer toward camp and you're hoping that it might actually just go all out and crazy, and then it pulls back always. And essentially the movie is also like basically like Mrs. Doubtfire, but with a trans cartel drug lord. It's bizarre. Like, I'm sorry. This movie
The plot is like literally her becoming the parent that she never was as a man to her kids. Yeah, but also the Selena Gomez character is like the dumbest character in the history of the planet.
And
like
my
the
boy,
amount of times
Diego Ramirez, what are you doing in this thing, man?
So Selena Gomez is the wife, and she's constantly like, "How do you know this? I don't understand. Why is this happening? Why do you?" And then the kid's like, "Why do you smell like dad?" And it's like they don't even once even comment in the movie of being like, "Oh, dad had a trans sister." Okay, like.
It's like, no, it's just, yeah.
But like Selena Gomez is so bad. Like astoundingly
It's also,
bad.
the movie's really, really cheap looking. It was clearly all shot on like sound stages and not on like locations. The dancing's terrible and awkward and weird. It's just misjudged at every moment.
In the Lex G podcast, Lex talks about this movie, which he says he kind of had fun with a little bit. But that during the sequence at the charity ball where Zoe Saldana is doing these weird dance moves in her red suit, going around to like, and her lyrics are all about like the hypocrisy of all these people, but you're gonna pay up now kind of thing. Like, you got somebody killed, now time to pay and stuff. But she's doing this weird like jiving, like I almost want to say
her arms
miming.
are like moving, like
yeah, it's like a weird mix between like it's like trying to be cabaret basically within this a little bit. No, it is. Within the movie,
I know,
and it's
failing.
stupid. But the Lex G had this comment of crawl under the world cringe. It's like hide under the world cringe. It's just like, okay,
crawl under the universe.
Yes, crawl under the universe. That's it. Where it's like I need to hide right now so badly because what I'm witnessing is so unfortunate. Anton, it's also hilarious because it's a movie, entirely set in Mexico, except for a very brief scene in Thailand and London. There's two scenes. And Switzerland. The Thailand scene is hilarious.
Oh, man. Because, of course, that's where you go to get a
sex change. So, it's very funny. But it's essentially set in Mexico where every single man is out to kill you or will rob your car or is in with drugs, and every single woman has lost a man to drugs. And it's like, it's basically like, are the only people that the filmmakers have ever met from Mexico, because nobody actually involved in the movie is Mexican. It's like if the only people you've ever met from Mexico are either the guy who tried to steal your car or the woman who cleans your house.
Also, just to put it on the record, two good friends of ours who live in Mexico City, and one of whom is Mexican, hated this movie so much.
It does seem like Mexicans just really don't like it, partially because the accents are just completely not Mexican Spanish.
Yeah.
So there's no Spanish actors.
Well, there's
No,
Spanish.
like even I'll give one grace note of nice. Zoe Saldana, I didn't realize she was actually fluent native speaker of Spanish.
Yeah, she's Dominican.
Dominican.
Yeah. But no, the actors are not. They're like not Mexicans. They're just other Spanish speakers,
Including some Europeans, right?
Yeah, a lot. It's mostly it's a French production, right?
Yeah.
Anton, it's not. It's even if it wins, which I don't think it will anymore after the controversies with the lead actor, but which is kind of honestly hilarious to witness as a like. You really want to melt down in public, don't you? Like booking interviews and stuff where she's just like without telling like Netflix or her publicist and then just going and be like, actually you're misinterpreting it all, but like still like putting her foot in her mouth again. Like it's like, yeah, everybody has like bad past tweets, but like these ones are not that past. They're like from 2 years ago. But again, nobody pays attention to Europeans being like casually racist online. But yeah, it's not worth watching that time.
It's kind of a crazy movie, and it's actually kind of baffling that it was nominated.
It's not like this next movie, which I know neither of you have seen, but I really think you guys should see with Nickel Boys. So Nickel Boys is interesting, not entirely, but like its main formal decision, which is film the entire movie from the point of view of the two main characters. So every single thing is a POV shot. Kind of informs the entire approach of everything in the movie, so it becomes super subjective, which kind of.
But that's also nested within a flashback.
Well, yes. So that's the other thing is that you have the adult character. Actually, it's the one time the movie breaks the perspective shot, but the camera is placed directly behind his head, so you never see his face. You just see the back of his head, and it's kind of like fixed with him, almost like a one of those rigs, right, that goes onto the actual back of the actor. Because then it creates what it means, I think, formally is that those the current day frame narrative is not something that we're ever actually meant to engage with face on. It's only meant to be like a retrospective thing, right? We're only glimpsing it as a bookend, so we only see one half of the bookend, and then the important part is what's in between, before. But because of this, it kind of resolves one of my issues with a lot of movies that are, about racial suffering, to put it lightly, right? Like characters just experiencing horrible racism, is that so many movies nowadays like that are made to kind of finger wag or pat on the back the audience member. And this one doesn't seem even interested in the audience. It's like, it's so interested in the characters that it's actually just like, you're going to experience what they do, and that's the only interest in the movie. We're just going to put you in their head. And
I'd like to see
subjectivity.
Yeah, and it does have the Malick elements of, and I think it's partially because Ramel Ross, the director, he's like a Southern American, so he's got that same thing with Malick, which I think they just approach the incorporation of nature into American life a little bit more.
Or like early David Gordon Green, maybe.
Yeah, but again, Southern. He's from Arkansas, David Gordon Green. The movie will take these breaks, but you'll just get like snippets, and it'll just be the character, and because it's POV, it's even easier. But like the characters, you'll get a shot of him like fiddling with things, or just like there might be a bug crawling on like his windowsill, and he's just paying attention to it. Or there's actually this great shot in one of the earlier scenes where it's with him with his grandma, and his grandma's cutting a cake and asks if he wants the cake, and then the camera, he like leans in, and the camera pays all the attention to her scraping the side of the bowl to get the extra icing off, and it's just like this super really tactile little thing that has nothing to do with the narrative, but it's just, you could totally see like a little 6-year-old like staring at his grandma and like looking through the glass on the underside of the bowl and watching it be scraped, because it's just this interesting way of engaging with the world.
Oh yeah, I definitely have to see this movie because it seems like it's interested in the way that film can draw attention to things in a way that people even like, you mentioned Malick, but also even like Tarkovsky or people are interested.
Yeah, it's just, it seems really deliberate about how it's constructed as a film. and how it's going to present the story through that. Because it's based off this Pulitzer Prize winning novel, I'm pretty sure the story is like the same. It's just doesn't seem like it's trying to do the adaptation thing normally.
I would like to check it out, and I assume it'll be on Prime eventually. If it's Amazon, MGM is the studio.
Oh, I didn't even pay attention to what the studio is at the beginning, but that would make sense.
It's been a long wait for some good news.
Good news, good news, good news. Things is changing.
Nana, what is it?
I let you down.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Hell, I let you down.
No. No, I'm okay. I'm hanging in there.
Okay, this next movie I haven't seen, The Substance.
The Substance. This is another movie where I'm like, I can't believe this in one sense. Like, this movie would never have been nominated in the past.
So why do you think it's nominated?
I think it's nominated because of Demi Moore's role, and it's really obvious sort of Me Too adjacent, like dealing with the way women in Hollywood are pressured to deal with the hypocrisy of like aging. And
so she takes something to like
so the premise of the movie
herself, right?
is that there's this is where the movie for me also I'm like, it's both wants to be taken really seriously as this like allegory for like how women are treated, and yet it doesn't it's not quite camp. It doesn't want to go into the pure, like, again, campy, totally silly, although this movie is very much a genre film, horror film, body horror film. Like, the main character, she's a, like, exercise guru, kind of like a Jane Fonda type person, and somehow she's also, like, the biggest star in the world. It doesn't
nowadays?
It doesn't really make any sense.
What world is this?
Like, it's not a real world. It's like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's a French
and I
world.
thought they were going to really go into that, like, kind of surrealism, and it almost does at times. Like, Dennis Quaid plays a character who's basically like a Harvey Weinstein type, like, monster. His name's actually Harvey. Like, this is the kind of movie.
Really?
Like, I'm pretty sure. I'm like, I swear it is. Let me double check that.
So this is why the movie is nominated.
Yes, but it is also like extremely, extremely gross. Like,
so how does it compare to?
Yeah, he is Harvey. He is Harvey. Yes.
In terms of body horror, how does it compare to, say, a Cronenberg film?
It might be gross. It's actually grosser than most Cronenbergs. I would say it actually reminds me of like some of the visual effects of like a Brian Usna and Stuart Gordon film, like the horror guys who made like Reanimator or From Beyond and stuff. Like,
so probably like the older Oscar viewers are just like,
yeah, like they're gonna start watching it, and then there's the scene probably of like there's like one of the younger, like, and this is where I kind of admired some parts of the movie, like the earlier scenes where it just like. The younger version of her crawls out of her back. Like, you're just like, what the? It's like really, but
so
then
it's
at
like
the
a
end,
snake skin
it's
almost?
really disgusting, like just horrifying and frustrating. It has a really interesting. It could be an interesting central premise because the two characters. So you have the old. It's basically a younger version of her is birthed out, but her and her old version, they can't be active at the same time. So when one's sort of awake, the other one is kind of like lying there unconscious, and they each get a week on, week off. Yep.
oh, okay, that.
So it's like, it's kind of like, actually, it also has a little bit of an overlap with the show Substance that's popular on Apple right now.
Severance.
Or Severance, yeah. But the thing about The Substance is that it never wants to interrogate some of those interesting, like, sci-fi questions. Like, do they share... Like, it's never really clear if they share the same consciousness. Because ultimately what starts happening is the young and the old are fighting, essentially, against each other when they switch bodies. That's the sort of thing.
So is it science fiction in order to sort of be social commentary and not so much to explore, speculate on?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Ideas.
It never. So to me, I find that kind of speculative fiction annoying because there's actually a lot of really cool, interesting ideas that it never really wants to explore.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really understand the economics of who and when, why the company offers her this. It's all very mysterious. She gets like an envelope and has to go to this, thing and stuff. Yeah. And there's like these warnings about like, once you do this, you have to watch this like, video and stuff like on your phone.
Yeah. But because Hollywood loves to, it always likes to incorporate into the Oscars both
self-critique,
self-congratulation and self-critique.
Yeah.
But a sort of a regulated self-critique.
It's a velvet self-flagellation.
Yes. Ultimately, I do think Demi Moore's going to win, though.
Yeah?
Just because the narrative is all there.
Yeah.
I actually think Margaret Qualley is pretty good in it, too. But, like, and I would not give Demi Moore probably the Oscar, but it kind of, like, to not do it is both weirdly invalidating of it, because it's pretty clear she's had a lot of work done over the years to look that young in their early 60s. But anyway, it's I ultimately don't think it's a very good film. And it's not to my taste, as Spike, not my cup of tea, as Spike Lee would say.
I'm super curious just because of the body horror, and as like a huge Cronenberg fan. But I also, when a movie like this does really well with nominations, it actually infuriates me because it's like Cronenberg's never been nominated for an Oscar. No, his movies have never gotten any Oscar attention. I actually now think that like that's kind of a thing that they should like be proud of. Like he should be proud that he's not tainted by the Oscars.
It's like kind of surprising that Dead Ringers never did. Actually,
didn't A History of Violence?
How did Eastern Promises not get a Best Picture nomination or something?
Didn't A History of Violence get anything?
No.
History of Violence got some acting.
No, Eastern Promises got acting nom. Like there were some little noms from his movies. Yeah. Oh yeah, William Hurt got nominated for History of Violence.
He's great.
Brohim. He's just so weird in it. No, but it's this idea of people who are like, well, look, body horror is finally getting the respect it deserves. And it's like the fact that somebody, from the sounds of it, this is not body horror in the way I like it, which the Cronenberg is, you use this fantastic sci-fi horror scenario as a means to explore human psychology, not human society, right? It's like digging into the Freudian aspects of humanity. And, you get social commentary through things like Crash because it becomes through the psychological lens. It bubbles up and shows our modern predilections towards technology and how that speaks to the emptiness of our, social relationships and stuff. But I just hate this thing of being like, David Cronenberg walked so, Corley Fajo could run. And it's just like...
I just actually don't think...
Have you seen any Cronenberg movies?
So people are saying that this
I just don't really think it's very Cronenberg-esque.
Triumphs, like, over...
We got the same thing with that Titanic.
Titan.
Whatever. Titan. Whatever, that Palme d'Or winning movie about the woman who has sex with a car or something. It's like, I think that's the plot.
Ridley Scott already did that in...
No, but it's just...
The Counselor.
I constantly am like, I don't think you've watched any Cronenberg. Or you did, or you watched The Fly and you just didn't get it.
No, but like this movie, doesn't have the same kind of interest that Cronenberg does. I think it's just more to me. I'm like, this kind of movie would never have been nominated in the past, but now we're at a place where like, it's Demi Moore lending her sort of, I think, star to it. Really,
this is perhaps maybe I don't want to say no. Not enough people listen that I could actually get in trouble here, but I think it's. There is a element within the Academy and within critical circles, within Hollywood movie criticism, whatever, that there is a genre casting. There is essentially like a whitewashing of genre that happens only when it's presented through like female stories. So it's essentially the idea that somehow magically, because you did it and it's about women's issues, it's now important. Mm-hmm. But if it didn't have that social commentary element, it's not worth it. It's the same reason why Melissa McCarthy for some reason got nominated for Bridesmaids, for being the gross out goofy supporting character in a way that Zach Galifianakis didn't for The Hangover. Yeah. And it's just like, well, it's novel because she's a woman, and it's actually
condescending.
Yes, it's a condescending attitude because ultimately Hollywood is extremely condescending to women.
The substance almost is a little bit.
But it's,
which is funny because it's made by a woman. But.
Yeah, but made by a French woman who, frankly, the French have some very strange sexual
this year,
politics.
Between Emilia Perez and The Substance, I'm like, these are two movies that also get showed. They're both very French, and I like a lot of French films, but both of them have the issues that I have with them kind of stem from some of like just the bad taste of certain French people. Like it's the kind of France that like Jerry Lewis, not like.
Jerry Lee Lewis.
Well, that too. I mean, there's some bad taste there as well.
Okay, so what about? I think now we got to talk about the revisionary Wizard of Oz musical Act 1.
You know what, Anton?
The gargantuan Act 1.
Yeah,
which is longer than the entire runtime of the musical on stage.
Yes, I was like looking up. I was like, how did they extend it past the runtime of the entire musical?
Well, you turned Defying Gravity into like a 15-minute action sequence. That's how.
I was just gonna say though, as a musical, Wicked is actually much better than Emilia Perez because there's multiple songs that I can actually could still hum to you and
who
know
wrote
the main tunes.
The songs?
Yeah, Stephen Schwartz, who also did like Godspell and stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, a quality.
There's a quality to a sturdiness to Wicked because it's been on Broadway for decades, and you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I did not think Wicked was like a good movie. I gave it ultimately like a mixed review on the site.
I didn't hate it, but I didn't think it was.
Well, it's just because
not my cup of tea. Yeah.
I think it would be extremely my cup of tea, because it's the type of musicals I actually really like. Like, which is like big songs, big dance. Let's make it like belted out. People can really sing. You know, it's not Emilia Perez. They're not like whisper singing through it.
If Ariana Grande wins Best Supporting Actress, I would not be upset. She's very good.
Yeah, she's the best part of the performers of the movie, but she's funny and she just gets it.
And she can actually sing.
Yeah. It's that Wicked just doesn't work because it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. And it's one half of a movie.
I was going to say I think I really have to almost retain my judgment on the narrative and everything until the next week.
Okay, but does it belong on this list? Speaking about, like it is one of the bigger movies of the year.
I feel like it is one of those ones where there's an outside chance that back in the day of like a 5 Oscar, it's like a Chicago or something like that. Anton. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
That's Chicago.
Yeah, I always just think of Gear.
So like I could have seen it as like one of if there was only 5 nominees, it could have been the popular big hit nominee because back in the day we wouldn't have put the Dune like sci-fi blockbuster in there.
There's no chance Dune can win, right?
No,
they've all forgotten it existed.
The fact that it got half as many nominations as the last film, when most people consider it better, including the people voting. So it's just very silly. But it's also apparently Warner Brothers Discovery, it's a complete mess of a company right now, and they don't want to put much money behind promotional campaigns for Oscars, especially when in their mind they are going to try and play the Lord of the Rings thing, where throw everything at Dune Messiah and try and make that the first like sci-fi movie to win Best Picture. Basically, like they have this idea that like we're just gonna go so hard on the third one because it would be like, well, it's Denis finishing his trilogy, therefore we can now finally congratulate him for making his subspecies of a film that's set in sci-fi. Like, no, it's just Dune. Like, sci-fi still for some reason is like pulling teeth with the Academy. Like, even horror they are more open to than sci-fi. I don't get it.
So none of us have seen I'm Still Here, correct?
No, and I want
to see it, yeah. Because when I found out it was Walter Salles, who, he made Motorcycle Diaries, was it Bus 174, and I believe he was another producer or writer on City of God. But
yeah, I think so. So Anton, you've seen the fewest of these movies. So before we offer our predictions, which to end the episode, I'm curious whether you had any thoughts about other nominees in other categories or anything that you wanted to raise before we kind of
close this off. Yeah, can you see some stuff I haven't?
Yeah, I will say that I think A Real Pain scored a couple nods. Kieran Culkin for Best Supporting Actor, and then Jesse Eisenberg got Best Original Screenplay. And I believe
he won at the writing. It was WGA Awards, right?
Oh, okay. I don't know.
It's an original?
Yep, it's not based on anything. He wrote it himself.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, I mean, I thought that movie was really good. I could see, like, maybe probably Edward Norton's probably more of a favorite to win Best Supporting Actor, no?
Culkin's definitely the favorite.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay. I could see him winning, and I think it would be well deserved. It's not a supporting performance.
He's the lead.
It's a co-lead.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so there's a sense where they might be, they totally have calculated. We're hoping he can win Best Supporting Actor because he's not going to win Best Actor. It's definitely one of those. I don't know if he would win Best Original Screenplay. I think maybe Anora has a chance if it's going to ever get anything, but I can't tell.
Yeah, it did win the Indie Spirit Award of the Year, but that makes sense. He also won a Palme d'Or, so who cares? Did you know? It's interesting. The last few years, the Palme d'Or has had more of a presence in movies.
But it's the flattening of film culture again.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what about Best Animated Feature? I mean, I haven't seen Memoir of a Snail or Flow, but I
actually want to see Flow. Flow looks interesting.
Right now I can't tell if like Wallace and Gromit is actually kind of beloved by the Academy, so I wouldn't be surprised if it wins. And a lot of people like my kids, I feel like that it really hit for them and they really liked it, and I feel like it's been kind of a hit. But Wild Robot also is quite beloved right now.
Of course, so Flow has won a few awards.
Yeah.
And Wallace Gromit, of course, won the
I feel like Flow got a nomination and that's its award, like they're not, I really couldn't see them actually giving.
Like they're a very small Latvian film,
like
right?
microfilm.
It sounds really interesting though, because it's like kind of like abstract, right? This cat in a flood that's saving these animals, and there's like no dialogue.
Yeah, no, it sounds
and
interesting.
he built it using Blender, which is like the open source CGI.
Yeah, that's cool.
Software.
Oh, really? Wow, that's cool.
So I want to watch it, but it's not on streaming yet. So.
But I think that's really all I've seen that's up there.
Did either of you see Inside Out 2?
Oh no, I did. I saw Inside Out 2.
You think it'll win?
No.
Okay.
It's just like it.
Inside Out 2, but just more of the same. Yeah.
Inside Out 2 was Disney doing exactly what they just needed to do this year, was put out just a really
big
hit that's very basic, that's very like uncontroversial, that is palatable for like basically everyone in the world.
Yeah.
But it's also like unremarkable in terms of a Pixar movie, a Disney Pixar movie.
It's been a while since there's been a remarkable Pixar movie.
Oh, and they seem to just be doing all these sequels now, which is annoying.
Toy Story 5 next year or what?
Yeah, and then, I don't know.
All right. Big question here. End it off, because I actually think this is the most unpredictable Oscars.
It's hard to choose.
Almost ever that I can remember. Like I'm trying to think the last time where I just did not know what was going to win at all. And it doesn't even seem like a 2-horse race either,
So what do you think are the possibilities? Emilia Perez, Conclave, A Complete Unknown, and...
Okay, I would have said that, based on some things, I would have said that Emilia Perez a month and a half ago had a chance. I don't think it has a chance.
100%. Right after the nominations actually
came
did
out, win the Golden Globe,
I
right,
think
for
it would
comedy.
win.
The Golden
Brutalist
Globe.
won the Golden Globe for Best Drama,
Yeah.
which I'm not sure that means as much as it would ever. But, so there's that. 2 months ago, early January, I would have said Emilia Perez, good chance. Then I shifted. I said I would have thought, probably The Brutalist. It seems to be really like critically acclaimed. Then Conclave won the BAFTAs and some producing awards, and the SAG Ensemble Award, which is often sort of also a Best Picture type award. Anora won the Palme d'Or and the Indie Spirit stuff, which I think it has an outside chance, but I feel that film's not really the kind of film for the Academy. So I kind of think it's down to, I'm going to throw my prediction. I'm going to say Conclave.
Anton, what about you?
I'm also saying Conclave.
Yeah? You're riding that the actors are going to bring their love, especially once Emilia Perez.
Once I saw it, I also think that the ending also allows Hollywood to make a statement politically but while not sort of touching kind of the dumpster fire that is Emilia Perez right now.
Yeah.
In terms of like,
gender
they can comment on gender identity and stuff, but they're not going to have to deal with kind of the.
That's not really, for anyone who's not Catholic, it doesn't seem super controversial. Yeah.
No, but what I'm just saying is like, I get
it's
ending
political.
clued me in on a political level that the movie I wasn't aware that it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was just one of my favorite genres of guys talking in rooms, which is one of my but like, there's a little bit more going on.
What about you, Aaron?
Okay, so a part of me still thinks that Emilia Perez is going to win.
Okay.
But I will say that Anora's going to win.
Okay.
What?
And it comes down to the fact that it won the PGA and it won the DGA.
Ah, yes.
And that overlap usually has the most overlap with the Oscars. So I'm just going based off the pure stats play, which the stats say that Anora
and I was just
win.
going off their SAG and BAFTA,
So even though I don't think Anora is a movie that's necessarily representative of what people watch, it's my second favorite of the nominees. So I'm would
Probably
be
my
super
favorite
happy
film of the year,
if it won. Like, that'd be kind of sweet, actually.
Mm-hmm.
If Sean Baker wins and stuff. And
I have to say, Sean Baker seems like the kind of also film geeks that I like. He almost seems, I follow him on Instagram and stuff, and he does seem almost like a Tarantino-esque, like, psycho about, like, old movies, like, but not just, like, the classics, but also, like, Grindhouse, exploitation, all that stuff, right? So he seems to be someone who cares about movies, and I guess that also probably appeals to directors and people.
yeah. But, again, it's a very unpredictable year.
Yeah.
Basically, the only result that would really... Like, if Nickel Boys or I'm Still Here wins, I'll be truly baffled.
Yeah.
Are those possible, do you think?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think they've seen enough
and then the
people
ones
see
I would
them.
be quite surprised if Dune or Wicked did, even though I think it makes sense in some weird way, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. Wicked, again, they might wait till the next one, right? Dune 3, Wicked 2.
I feel like the other thing for Conclave is just that it's made like 100 million, almost 100 million.
Oh, it didn't?
Yeah.
No, it made 30 million
Internationally.
domestically. Internationally, 100.
No, internationally.
Yeah. So that's what, like, the only movies domestically that are over 70 million are Complete Unknown, Dune, and Wicked. But no, Conclave was like a modest hit, I guess. But I just think that if this was 10 years ago, Conclave would have made 100 million in North America.
Conclave is also, though, Aaron, like one of those, to me, to circle back to it, that, like you said, the what's the theater in Toronto?
Varsity.
The Varsity, or like the Princess here, like all the sort of boomer and older people I know in my community of like upper middle class and academics, they all loved it. So
no, I agree. So just my other comment then, I guess, on that is the Academy has started trending away from those movies, because otherwise 1917 was that movie, and I thought it was the front runner, and then Parasite wins, and All Quiet on the Western Front by Berger, who did Conclave, was that type of movie, and then it didn't win. Everything Everywhere won, right?
Yeah.
And so I just feel
and
like
Nora would fit with those two.
With the Everything Everywhere.
The evolution
or
of this
with
younger.
Parasite, because it also is a film that won the Palme d'Or and is a little more edgy.
Yeah, and I think it's also Neon, which is the distributor, are playing
Also
it
did Parasite.
real hard, because they want like to shore up there's kind of bona fides to be actually we're better than A24 in terms of the prestige indies.
Well, they did do Parasite and Nora, and those are better. So
well, yeah, A24's got the Brutalist, right? So
yeah,
they're running that.
I'm Igor. You?
Annie. I'm Vanya's wife.
Congratulations.
Hopefully, we'll see what happens. By the time that a lot of people listen to this, probably the Oscars will have already happened, so you'll get our thoughts and you'll know whether we're being right or wrong. Regardless, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Three Brothers Filmcast.
Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
I bid you farewell.